It's Toronto Maple Leafs time. Welcome back to Scouching's 2025 NHL Draft Recap Series, and boy oh boy, are the Toronto Maple Leafs ever in a new era here. At 64th overall, they took my brain out of my skull because they drafted Tenis Lucbar, who I had at 50th overall. I don't think there is a soul out there who had him anywhere close to that. Maybe Tony Ferrari. I mean, Tony, if you're watching this, I think you did. I could go look, but I'm too lazy. Tenis Lucbar is a tremendously fascinating player. As raw as it gets. A player who I just think brings a lot to the game, but none of it at the NHL level right now. This is a guy who I would bet on if the NHL is going in the direction of big, lanky, raw guys. He is really smart. Really good at moving the puck, timing things really well around the ice. He won a lot of faceoffs this year as well. He's a big boy, but he's got really good skill too for a big guy. This is a guy who also I think is a better skater than it seems. He just doesn't generate a ton of speed, but he does get around the ice pretty well. He works under pressure really well and resists opponents pretty well. Goes to the net, does not waste his shooting opportunities, and that was a premier part of his data profile. Keeps it simple. Plays an NHL style of play, in my opinion, in a European flavor. Just moves the puck really effectively, is not afraid to defer to others. He doesn't really dump and chase a whole lot because he doesn't really need to. He finds ways to get around it really creatively. I think this is a player that over time just gets better and better and better and better. And I know there were some Toronto fans who were wondering what the hell this guy is all about. Trust me, there's something here. I was a really big fan of him. Toronto just jumped at it and took him, and I'm excited about it because I love this guy. At 86th, they drafted Tyler Hopkins out of Kingston. Just an all-around smart player who's got some size, but maybe doesn't really use it as much as you would like, and a bit of skill, but really relies on his smarts and pass timing to just march play up the ice well. He didn't really move the needle a whole lot for me, and I don't know if I see an NHL player with Hopkins, but they seem to really like him, and he's just a smart kid. But at 137th, you want to talk about a big target. They drafted Will Bell, and not only does he have a really cool first name, but this is a fascinating player. He was touching my first round at times this year. I think the ceiling on Will Bell is really high. I see what he's capable of. I see the talent, I see the physicality and the skill level and all of these things, but it just never came out as much as you would want. And if I were coaching him, it's almost like he doesn't realize what he's capable of. And towards the end of the year, I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for him to really sort of turn a corner, really sort of take control of more shifts and more games, and it just wasn't happening. And he just kept falling down my board a little bit, but I still love him. I still think there's a huge potential player here. He is big and fast and physical, but he is no slouch with the puck on his own stick. I think there is a lot of upside to work with Will Bell. I think the more you encourage him and the more you put him in a position to succeed at the higher points of a lineup, the better off he's going to be. I think he's a great complement for a whole bunch of different types of players, and I really do think that there could be at least a depth NHL player here with Bell, just because of the energy and the physicality that he plays the game with, and he does so doing it quickly. He is not slow out there on the ice, and to me, in the modern paradigm of the NHL, if you think that the world is heading towards a direction of big, fast, heavy, physical players who can make quick plays, get the puck out in front, raise hell, that's the style of play you want, Will Bell does that, so I'm all for it. Then at 153rd, they drafted Harry Nancy, and not only have people said to me many times since the draft that the name is one of the best in the draft, but also people have been going, who is this guy? Because Central Scouting did not have him ranked. I had him ranked in the top 70, right around where I had Will Bell ranked. I love Harry Nancy. This is a kid who I didn't expect a whole lot out of this year, but the more and more I watched him, I just felt that there's nothing but upside with him. The skating stride is not amazing, but he gets around the ice okay. He does his job pretty well. His forechecking ability on paper for me was second to none. It was excellent. He's got physical intensity that I think he uses enough, but I would love to see more, especially with an improved skating ability. But this is a guy who just does everything right. It's really hard to look at a Nancy and see that many real holes in his talent, but the way that he plays definitely could use some work. Nancy is just an intensely hard worker, wins a lot of battles, I think does a lot of things the right way, that if the floor of his talent just comes up a little bit, please for the love of God, shoot the puck a little more and get into better scoring areas when you do shoot, because he's big and skilled and can do it, but he just doesn't, then I think there's a lot here. His offense with him on the ice was anemic, and that's why he doesn't have any points, but he still had a better share of his team's offense done through shot assists than almost anyone I tracked. He was desperately trying to generate offense for others when on the ice, and just wasn't doing much on his own. So I would love to see him sort of balance things out a little bit. Hopefully he gets some better players to play with Owen Sound this year, because I think there's a ton to love about him. If Harry Nancy were playing on the London Knights this year, I guarantee you he's on Central Scouting, and I bet you he's drafted a lot higher than 153rd. At 185th, they drafted Ryland Felinger, who, funnily enough, was at his prom during the NHL Draft and found out he was drafted. I don't know if I see an NHL player there, but again, big, lanky, skilled guy. I don't think the physicality of the game is really his forte, but he does have a little bit of this mobility that I like in bigger defensemen. He's a little bit confident with the puck, a little bit of that deception in transition, looking one way, passing another, playing around with defensive structures a little bit. I just didn't see a huge upside player here, and I think there's a long way to go to the NHL. A decent shot from the point as well, brings some interesting tools. While I would have drafted someone else really late in the draft, if they're gonna be going out and drafting big, lanky, raw defensemen who can't score, he's at least one of the more intriguing ones that teams have taken that I've seen since the draft. At 217th, Toronto drafted Matthew Lechar, and Lechar's a player that I had never heard of before. I said this in a TikTok that went a little bit turbo, and someone in the NHL texted me after the draft was over and said, if Matthew Lechar can get drafted, anything is possible, and follow your dreams. And you know what? God love him. I watched Lechar after the draft. He did not play all that much with Kitchener this year. He was down the lineup, and he is a physical player. I think he's a really good example of a player that just is not my type. I saw Lechar in the video that I saw since the draft. Let's say there's a chaotic situation in front of the net, right? The puck bounces at his feet right in front of the goalie. What does he do? Does he play it with his stick and knock it out of the way, get it to the corner, diffuse the pressure somehow? No. He gets his stick up off the ice, gets his fists in the air, and shoves who's ever in the way until something happens, right? Personally, I like to focus on the puck in a hockey game rather than the sort of psychological element of physical play and pushing guys around and all that. In terms of the actual fundamentals of the game, it has no impact, but not touching the puck when it's in a scoring area right in front of your goaltender. This is a guy who goes into hits along the corner with his arms in the air, looking to hit you hard. He's a decent shooter as well. He scored some goals this year, but at the end of the day, it's 217th overall. But overall, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, for a team that just didn't have a pick in the top 2 rounds, basically, they did really well. So overall, I'm giving them a 1D. I think Tenis Lucbar could develop into one of the more impressive players to come out of this draft relative to where they're picked. I don't think he's anything more than a good third-line center in the NHL, but there were players drafted in the first round that, while I was more confident about, I felt would be good third-liners in the NHL. If I see him as a similar ceiling player as, say, a Brady Martin, and you get that at 64th, and it actually works, then you've done an unbelievably good job relative to everybody else. Obviously, I'm not saying those two players are equal. Lucbar has a much longer way to go, but he does have that style of play that I love. Tyler Hopkins, I wasn't a huge fan, but I see the smarts, I see the floor, maybe there's something they can develop into his game. Bell and Nancy back-to-back in the middle rounds of the draft, big fan. People say I don't like big players. These are a couple of big guys that I really, really loved this year. They were drafted way after I had them ranked. I had them both in between 60 and 75, so to get two of those guys past 120th, really, really good value in my opinion. And Felinger, I think is intriguing, but I don't really see him as a steal or an NHL pick right away. And then Matthew Lechar, say what you will. I mean, look, he's got his brand of hockey. Teams like it. Maybe there's something there. He seems like a good kid from the interviews that I've seen of him here in Toronto. I think it's a really good draft class for a team that barely had picks in the first 2 rounds. But there is a floor here. The D is basically for the length of time it might take for guys like Lucbar and Nancy and Felinger to really develop, or the likelihood that a guy like Hopkins finds his way into the NHL in my view. But at the end of the day, this could be a really interesting class to track for Toronto, and I'm really curious to see how it turns out. And with that, we're going to call it. If you liked the video, definitely like and subscribe. If you really liked it, definitely consider a subscription over at Scouching.ca, where you can get access to all kinds of fun data tools and our Discord server, and plenty of other fun stuff that you're just not going to find anywhere else on the internet. So check that out at Scouching.ca. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.